entrepreneurial side, who sponsors the group with some free memberships, and you probably heard the pitch before, so if you're in between gigs or looking for stuff, they sponsor a free membership, and we have ones to give away by doing it at the next meetup. So a reason to come back. Tonight we're welcoming Yuri Labby, who works as general manager and all-around technical guru for our PixScout company, which is a Getty Images company in Israel, and they do some amazing things with algorithms around identifying images. He's going to talk tonight about building lightweight products, so thank you. Take it away.
Good evening. May I first ask you maybe to move forward a little bit? Help me to Okay, so as I mentioned, my name is Uri. It's actually Ur, so it's written with U. It's like a German U, Uri Levy. And I'm going to talk about how to build lightweight products. Now, it's not a typical software craftsmanship meeting where I usually talk about code, but I can assure you that the same principles that apply in this software craftsmanship basically apply in that talk. And we all want to know how to build better products, so excel in building better business products. So, though I'm doing kind of a GM work, I'm a developer, and once upon a time I got a very scary responsibility to be responsible for the revenues of my own products. Okay, not only shipping them to production, but basically driving the revenues and managing the cost. And it's quite a scary responsibility. And at that point, I wanted to find out how to build better products because I was responsible for that. And obviously, I started by looking at the counterexamples. So I will show you a few counterexamples, and of course, please feel jump into the discussion and ask questions. And by maybe the virtue of counterexample of heavyweight products, we'll try to come out and define what is, in my opinion, a lightweight product. Okay, and since we are in technology, and there are all those great people that coin terminologies like lean and agile and things like that, I'm the one who hopes to coin the lightweight product terminology. So, what are the counterexamples? I'll start by example number 1. And here I think you have all those signs, right? And signals of catastrophe appearing here. And yeah, well, it's a developer's product, a product that I'm not sure somebody actually mocked up or tried with customers. We have many text boxes and radio buttons and checklists and whatever. And I'm sure that somebody needs a really advanced course and really understanding what's going on here. So maybe we have here like maybe 2 or 5 customers using that product. And we all quite feel that this is, it's a disaster. However, there are some other examples, and these are really true examples. This is a commercial product that actually used in a couple of companies that I have seen. And this is a lightweight CRM product, something like from 90s, whatever. And here's an image they tried obviously to sell, and they recapture some information about where it was used and who is the customer. There's the contact details, some other stuff going on here, some web page information. It's basically selling images on web. And you can see that this is, maybe a little bit better example, but still quite ugly and problematic. It's a functionality that's scattered and spread it, and again, somebody needs really to understand what is the workflow. So there is no message about what that product is about, what we want to do. There is not immediate focus on what we need, or what are the features that we need to touch in order to operate the product. Let's go to a slightly advanced example about, airplane company, United. And you know, as airplane company, you really want to do, or you really want to provide two major features, and they are booking the flight, right, and checking in, right? So booking the flight, okay, fine, we have that on the left side. We can argue whether it's user-friendly or friendly, what is the user experience, and etc. But okay, we have that functionality. How about checking in? Okay, where is that on the website? Yeah, okay. So somebody already looked at that, but let me point something. There is more check-in options. I'm not sure that I see the basic check-in options, but I can see the more check-in options, right? So it clearly somewhere here, right? And you're right, the pre-boarding pass is basically check-in, but this is a domestic terminology, right? If I'm coming from, if I'm flying in, taking an international flight, usually I need to provide some more details, like obviously the passport, the address where I am staying, some other details. So it's a slightly different operation. So this functionality is more or less okay. We can understand that, but it's vague. We still need, you know, if we're targeting ourselves to the domestic audience, that may be fine, right? But for international audience, it's a little bit problematic. How about the next message? Here's a very nice message, okay, about making a safe neighborhood, right, by 2 police officers on the bus. And this is quite simple, right, message. We understand that, we see the feature, we know what it's talking about, right? But there is some mismatch in that feature. Anybody can tell me if you see something like that? I think point you to a specific place, okay? It's a real example, okay, in UK of a message about basically safe neighborhood where the placement of the image itself, right, here with the police officer at that place does not convey the right message. It actually conveys the opposite message, right? So I'm not sure about the safe neighborhood, actually quite unsafe in my opinion. So this is a design consideration. We have here a message, a clear message about something, right? But the design consideration, how to place correctly the elements, actually conveys a different one. And to prove that example, let's take a look at this serve. And I'm interested in understanding what kind of switch actually switched on the burner, right? So you could say this one probably can apply here, or it can apply here, I don't know, right? So you need to look, you actually need to search and look at the patterns like here is on the drawings and understand what exactly what exactly going on here. But here's another example, a little bit slightly different example. And tell me please what happens here. Here it's clear without anything else what actually switched on and what operates what kind of burner. So kind of summarizing those counter-examples, I would say what we have in products, it's a lack of messaging, lack of primarily functionality that we can easily understand immediately. Or it's hard to follow the functionality because it's scattered, spread and there is no obvious path of execution. Sometimes we have a vague message about like terminology that we use. Sometimes it's a misleading product design about the safety of our neighborhood and what is in reality. And sometimes we have all that, but it's still not intuitive to use. We still need to read signs to understand what's going on. So all those, let's say, signs about or counterexamples about being bad products are obviously the things that we don't want to have in our products. And here we're coming to something else called Lean. And recently everybody is talking about Lean, right? Lean management, Lean development, Lean whatever, and Lean product. And when we talk about Lean products, usually people say, oh yeah, we understand that it's basically nothing, no features there in that product, right? And Well, but it's not funny. That's how people perceive or capture the lean methodology. Now, usually they also think about 80-20, the Pareto rule, right? So they're saying, find the 80% of people will use only 20% of your features. And that's kind of true, but not exactly. So let me give you another example. Here's Google, okay? Is it a lean product? And just as a side note, could you look here, please? Do you have the urge to click and search? You do, right? That's a design consideration, the right element of design that is placed here, and you have that urge to click and do something. But we'll come to that later. So is it a lean product? Is it a simplistic product? Kind of one functionality? Yeah, it is. I mean, it's really, easy to go here, to input the information, to search and understand what's going on. However, Google is not so simplistic, right? And if we were talking about those simplistic products, we will never have Amazon and all other byproducts that Google provides to us. And by that it means that there is a dirty secret about products. And that dirty secret thing means that more features actually equals more buyers, and that's for sure. And I can tell you that as long as you will invest in your product and you will continue to build and add more features, you will have more buyers. Okay? And I will prove in a second, I'll kind of reason that in a second, but that's true. And you can read and find, on the web a few research papers that are talking about that, and they definitely emphasize that more features means more people that are using your product. So here's Google, right? And okay, correct. It's not the search product, but these are all those byproducts that Google has, like image search and Picasa and Google Drive and Translate and Gmail, whatever. And everything that they are building, it's like an ecosystem just to support the search functionality that brings obviously the primarily revenue. Okay? So this is not in the same product. It's additional. We are talking about these are additional products that supplement the primarily product, but these are more features that they push even for free just to help us to use them. And if we are talking about the Pareto rule, I will actually change it a little bit and will say that 20% of the features of your product are being used by different 80% of the people. And this is actually the right definition of the Pareto rule. So, what does it mean? If I will, look at you and give you an exam of sorting out and selecting what are the best features in iPhone. And we will take iPhone as an example, so sorry all the Android users. But let's say, what are the primary features that you like in iPhone? And I will tell you that 80% of the current group will probably agree on 20% features that everybody uses every day. And those are the features that if I know, I basically can use and can target my development and can manage my costs and can obviously grow my revenues. So in that case, the 2080 means that if we change the group and we will go to another group, we'll find additional 20%, and additional 20%, and additional 20%. So eventually, we cannot read off of all our features because somebody else is using those features nowadays, right? So we cannot read off of them immediately, okay? So the more features we have, the better product we have, yet we still cannot implement immediately all the features, okay? So the lean, though, as you probably know, the lean is actually a process. The lean is a process, it's not a definition of a product, it's not a simplistic product with one functionality, because otherwise nobody will buy it, as we discussed before. And lean is basically identify the value, identify what we want to deliver, map the value to the stream, then create the flow, establish and seek perfection. We will not talk about that, and we will go directly to a definition of a lightweight product. And I tell you what, that definition actually comes from the company from Pixel, the company that I work with, where we apply those definitions and we apply those techniques in order to deliver in short cycles highly focused products to that specific cycle. So what do I mean by a lightweight product? First, it's a short cycle. It's something that should be time limited, but also short, and we'll talk about in 2 slides about the length of the cycle. The second one, I will say that the 80-20 or 20-80, doesn't matter right now, the Pareto rule, it actually applies within the same cycle. So what I will say is a cycle is like a group of people. And sometimes the cycle receives the data from the old cycle, from all other cycles, historical cycles. And sometimes it's brand new features, brand new ideas, it doesn't matter. But the cycle, from my perspective, it's a closed group that once I will do what I will call a features discovery method, and we'll talk about that in 2 slides. Once I'm doing that, I'm closing the cycle, okay? And I'm saying, look, I have identified my group, I have identified the 20% within that group, and that's what I'm going to deliver, okay? So the 20-80 or 80-20 applies only in that cycle, and during that cycle, I'm entitled to discover those 20%, and everything else I will remove and try to deliver the 20%. Is that clear? Okay. In addition, the lightweight product, in my opinion, is the right design consideration. We need to do the simplistic things, and we'll talk about that in a second. A little bit of UX experience, a little bit of elements that we will put on the product that will construct the correct usage or will drive the correct use of the product. And obviously the measurement. Now, I will not talk about the measurement here in details, but in Lean, as you know, and in every process, it's good to have the data and actually learn out of the data and apply the data later on. And if we learn from the previous cycle and we learn what are the features that are being used, then we can tune. Then we definitely can discuss. It's no longer a talk where it's lovely to have that on the beer. It's actually a talk where you have the data and you can apply the data and reason why you want that feature or not. So here is actually a very good example of a lightweight product. Who's familiar with the Nespresso machines? Okay. It's a beautiful product, right? It's a very nice design. And we'll talk about that in a second. Actually, we as humans, we prefer a very specific design that usually will be constructed from circles. Okay, it's going to be less rectangle or triangle or something like that. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. It's a beautiful product, a product that knows how to deliver not only one coffee, actually a couple of coffees, right? Also could be hot coffee or cold coffee. Okay, so it could be cappuccino or cold coffee if you want. It's a product that was designed in iterations. If you read about that a little bit, there is an iterations of machines and how they were adapted to specific usages and how they change over the time to support that milk preparation and all that coffee brewing. Okay? So it's a lightweight product, and you're invited to read a little bit about that on the web and see how it was designed. And I'm not promoting that product. Okay, so what is a short cycle? We have it about 5 to 10 days. Okay? It's short, but it is not a technological definition. It's much more of a product definition. If I'm talking about delivery, obviously, if you're familiar with continuous delivery, that continues to deliver the check-in code or the features all the time without stop, I'm all for that. That's fantastic. But from the product perspective, if you have changed, let's say, the text box, it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to promote that product to my customers, right? Maybe I need to have a little bit more features, more heavy features there just to promote that to my customers. So 5 to 10 days is a cycle. During that cycle, I need to discover the 20% of the features. I need to disregard all the 80% and then to work only on those 20%. And that creates a highly focused delivery, right? I'm always delivering all those 20% that I have marked as important. And obviously I continue to review the data, continue to review it frequently, and apply the old data from analytics and things like that, and continue to decide what are the best features and what are not. So what is that feature discovery? That feature discovery is done each and every cycle, and it takes us about 2 to 4 hours to do. Now, it's not always the same, okay? So in reality, not always we have those feature discoveries because sometimes the features are obvious and they're kind of layovers from the old cycle, it could be. But we tend to do that, and that tends to focus us on these specific things. Now, what we usually have, we have that domain expert. Now, domain expert could be customers, discussed always in the agile and lean methodologies. But it could be somebody who actually worked, like a software engineer who worked for years with that customer. So he understands very well the systems, he understands very well the pain points, he understands what's going on there. And that what is important is basically in a very fast way to access that domain expert and to interrogate that domain expert and just to extract those 20% that we're talking about. So the technique that we are using, there are 2 techniques. The first one is more of a discovery, and the second one is more of a review after the discovery. So there is a fishbowl discussion methodology. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. Yeah, but basically what you're doing, you're set up, it's a role-playing game. So we basically play a game of feature discovery with our customers, so with our domain experts. So we just have a circle of chairs, and this is the outbound circle. And the inbound circle, the inner circle, has again 3 chairs. And usually 2 of them are occupied, okay? So they're occupied in that manner that the domain expert sits there, or it doesn't matter, sits on one of the chairs, and then there is a person who wants to answer, who wants to ask questions, and he sits on the second chair, and the third is always empty. And if somebody else, and obviously this is the participants or the audience, and if somebody from the audience wants to come in and to ask questions, then he takes over the third chair, but at that moment, the person that used to sit on the second chair needs to go out, okay? And that creates a very interesting discussion where you continue to ask questions, everybody takes notes. They write something to themselves, and after that we will compare the notes. And you will be surprised how many those, how many times the same sentence actually been perceived in different ways for different peoples. But when the majority captures that specific implementation, the specific business requirement, that becomes our 20%, okay, because everybody agrees on that. But besides that, it actually allows us to pinpoint and to ask many questions, and sometimes to repeat, and sometimes we will change a domain expert. So I will give you an example. Let's say we're talking about a retail website where we have, the search and then the item, and we have a checkout process, whatever, okay? So we can bring one domain expert who actually knows the categories of the items and how expensive they are and how he wants to lay out them, how he wants to bring them up. And then we can bring somebody else who actually, his expertise is how to make that cart to become a transaction. Okay? So what are the user experiences that he wants to have there in order to make that transaction happen? So, and we will change also the domain experts here from while to while just to ask the questions. So we basically in 2 to 4 hours distill all that domain to the 20% that everybody understands very well and they perceive as primary features. So it's going to work something like that. So there is a, let's say, a domain expert or somebody who understands the domain of the business. And we have a participant. And obviously the third chair is empty, so everybody can step in and ask additional questions. So we ask those questions, and everybody write those answers in the notebooks to compare later on. Then let's say a participant enters the inner circle. That means that this one should go out. Okay, that's a very interesting technique. I don't know whether you have applied that in the past, but it's quite effective. And that continues. So let's say I have another participant, and if he comes in, this one will go out, and that continues. Okay, for usually between 2 to 4 hours, just to have those features discovered. Now, this obviously eliminates ad hoc audience questions. Not everybody, asking, not everybody talking about their own pain points and their own experiences, and explain how it's important to solve it in that specific way. You have only, a very limited time to ask those questions because somebody else will come in and will replace you and will ask other questions. But the discussion it goes in that way that everybody receives the information, all the team. Okay? That creates the focus on what is needed, allows that discovery mode, and pinpoints very effectively any issues, any problems that used to be in the domain. Okay? It's a role-playing technique. Any questions about that? Yeah.
What do you mean by role-playing technique?
So role-playing technique is that because you can put, you can put here a domain expert that actually will play the role of that search. He will say, I'm a search page. He will actually use that terminology. He will say, I'm a search page. I have those 50 items that I want to present. What are those items? Oh, those items are very unique items that they have, or they are very expensive because I want to push something like that up to stream, right? Okay? So it's a role-playing game because the domain expert obviously can answer just, the questions and explain what he's doing. But the best way to do that is kind of that game. He can pretend to be a login page. He can pretend to be, and we can exchange those domain experts. He can pretend to be a guy who understands how to turn checkout processes into a transaction. Okay? Yes.
Where does the domain expert get the information from?
Sorry?
The domain expert,
Yeah.
where he gets the information from?
He's a domain expert, so either it's a customer of yours that you are using in that process, or it's somebody who worked for a long time, understands the pain points, understands what are the processes, or somebody else that you assign, like a product manager, but not a product manager that only manages the user stories. It's somebody who needs to understand. We're talking about somebody who needs to understand the domain. He needs to research, he needs to learn, he needs to read, he needs to practice that. And that's the best way to go, obviously.
So, if the domain expert is a customer, isn't it be too narrow just to ask one customer?
Well, you can replace the domain experts. You can bring a team of 4, but instead of them having a panel and talking about that to explain, you actually ask one of them only play a specific role for a specific time, and then you continue to exchange that. So you can review all those 4 guys, eventually. But that technique just narrows how you're doing that. Instead of writing documents or writing on the board, it's another way to pinpoint the workflows and the specifications. Okay. Okay, so the second technique is a technique of more to review what was done. Sorry. So I call it walk the flow. So basically we just replay that flow that we recaptured from that exercise usually with an application that is actually already working. Okay, so we need to have a working piece of software just to play it a little bit. Now, not fully implemented, but at least the workflows should be supported up to a certain degree that we will be able to review and understand that we actually continue to do what we specified in that exercise. So how it's been done? Usually we do that like up to 2 hours a cycle. So the cycle, remember, is a short one between 5 to 10 days. So at the end of the cycle, in the middle, towards the end, we will come and we will try to play the workflow that we identified before. And we will try to see whether there is some mismatches. Or for example, I am as a user cannot complete the workflow. Maybe I have identified a process there, but if I cannot complete that, that's a problem. Okay? So the flow is being done, walking the flow is being done collectively, and one person starts the conversation by upload saying, I'm starting the search by. I'm applying here the keywords, I'm starting from the categories, and then I'm going down. Okay, I'm getting the results. Here are the products. Where are the images coming from? Do we have those images before? Okay, where the prices are coming from? Who have prepared the prices? So he asks those questions, and he ensures that during the working skeleton of that product, he can see at least something of those features that we have discovered before. Okay? And decisions are made by voting. That means that sometimes we do discover some deviations from what we agreed, okay, before. So what we are doing. So for example, a feature was not misimplemented, but it's not enough. We feel that we cannot complete the flow. The flow is not logical. It's not user. We don't have that nice user experience. So what we are doing? In that case, we just at that spot receive a decision collectively by voting. Should we do X or Y? That's it. And once the decision is done, we're going to be implementing that just to finish the cycle in order to enter the next one. Okay? So let's talk about design considerations. So we were talking about short cycles, feature discoveries, walking the flow. Now let's talk about those design considerations that allow us to build lightweight products allow us to do, let's say, more focus-oriented products. Now, a lightweight product is a process as well. It's not just a definition of a product being simple, simplistic, small set of features as discussed before. It's a process of doing feature discovery, walking the flow, and applying correct design considerations. Now, most of those design considerations will be UX, UI, but I would argue that it's really important not to leave that to only a designer and actually test that in reality and apply a common sense and common patterns of the how to outline a product. So here's an example of one of our products. This product is basically, so let me maybe step back a little and explaining what we're doing. So Pixel, yes, developing a visual search engine based on image recognition algorithms, where when we input an image, we basically search visually, okay, in a large corpus of images, images that match the inputted criteria, basically the image, okay? So it's a visual matching engine. Now, what we do with that, there are plenty business implications. This one specifically is tracking the use of images on the web, okay, and then reporting that usage, or reporting those uses to our customers that can do numerous things, from analytics to sales leads to unauthorized use tracking and whatever, okay? So it's a product that basically shows here what we have found, like a very short line. We'll talk about that in a second. On the right hand, there's additional details with some examples of what we have captured. And on the left side, there is kind of a slicer and dicer, something like a slice and dice functionality. Okay, that's a product that I want to look at and tell you a little bit about the those design considerations that we applied in that product in order, in my opinion, at least biased opinion, to build a better product that our customers really enjoy using. So we obviously have a bus-law triangle, right, talking about our human needs, and there is surprisingly something like that in products as well. So we need to provide functionality first, only then reliability. Okay, the product should be reliable, usability, proficiency, and creativity. And if you see a product which is quite creative but you cannot use, the first thing that you're doing is uninstalling it, or I don't know, dropping it, and etc. Okay, so the most important part to sustain is basically to provide the functionality. In our case, in our domain, the functionality is look fast on the basic information about the captured data that we found on the web. We want to understand the country, the date, the number of the images, and there is some additional data there to the right that just expanded a little bit the right then. Okay? So it's a small data that arrives and you want to capture it immediately, and if you want to expand that, then by clicking on the row you will expand and have an additional data that will be provided to you. But it will not be shown unless you want it. Okay? So it's kind of functionality, right? First see that small piece of data, then receive additional data, and on the left side be able to slice and dice and search and understand what's going on with your data. And this is one of the important, obviously, features in every product, to be able to slice and dice and find the data that you are providing to your customer. Okay, so here are additional patterns. Accessibility. Objects and environment should be designed to be usable without modification. So, without any modification, you want people to come in, to look at your product and hit something very simple, and that's it, and get all the data that they need. In that case, what we did, we pre-configured, obviously, specific, and there's defaults like that, specific parameters on the slicer. Okay, so if we want to slice and we want to search, we want to find out what are the default parameters that are being used mostly by most of our customers, and to encode that in that way that once a customer comes in, the only thing that he needs to do is go and receive all the data that he needs. Okay, so pre-configured values is kind of utilizing your data without any modification by many customers. Okay? Questions about that? All right. The next one is going to be performance load. Again, we need to manage that, and if it's going to be quite hard to do a task, nobody will apply that task, or will search, or will do something with your product. So what we have here is basically the save search results. So basically we allow to save filters, or to save searches, right? And if somebody wants to reuse that, he doesn't need to go and to re-click again to select those values. He just needs to click on that, and obviously he can give you any name he wants. Okay, he just clicks on that save search and receives all the information immediately. Okay, this is a performance load pattern of saying, look, if you need all the time different queries, you need to give your customers the ability to save those criteria and then to rerun them easily, instead of allowing him to deselect and select again. So in search engines, okay, it's important to have such a capability of saving the data for later use.
So when you say performance load, you mean
Yeah,
performance load on the customer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not a technological term. It's more of how we can help our customer to do his job very quickly. Okay, so you don't want him to deselect values. Let's say he selected here a few values on the the slicer he inputted here many criteria. Now he wants to change that, but he runs the same query, let's say twice a day, right? One for that, one for that, one in the morning, one in the evening. So you don't want him, select everything and then continue to work and then deselect, select all other, inputs and all parameters and continue. You just want to allow him to save the data very easily. So there is a button called here, save and go. The result, the criteria are being pushed here. He can change that name and call it my morning query, whatever, okay, and just go again and use that tomorrow, okay? And so if you provide means to him to rerun that easily, then basically the only thing that he needs to do is just clicking once instead of reselecting all the values again and again. Okay, does it answer?
Yeah, no, I'm just sort of curious how exactly you measure that and how you decide that this task is not important enough so it can be 20 steps, and this task is important enough so it should be 3.
So this is the feature discovery, right? If he really runs that query once a month, I don't care. This is the 80% that I want to ditch and not to deal with that, right? But if I understand that he says, look, every morning I have that query, and then every evening I have that query. Now, I could even go further and pre-configure those queries, right? Exactly those queries and give it to him. I could do that as well. But now if he continues to say, you know what, but sometimes I will omit something in that and sometimes I will not, and that depends on my business purposes that I cannot provide right now the algorithmic way how to find that. I read about that customer, then I select something like that, I read about that customer, and then select something like that. So in that case, we can have, again, to the 20% of the feature, we can understand what are the most used values and most used fields, and give him something that by saving that for later use, he will just click on that and maybe just add a few other values and re-execute, okay? So it comes to feature discovery. We need to understand whether it's really important or not, and whether it's 20 steps or only 3. Okay.
So do you ever make a distinction between them thinking it's important and it truly being important?
Yeah. So basically, and this is very interesting in feature discovery in that fishbowl, because if all the domain experts, if there is more than one, continue to say the same, okay, it's probably important, right? Look, guys, there is no, it's not something like white and black. It's product, right? It's not technology. So we cannot really for sure know 100%, but we obviously can sense that and reason about that and see whether it is repeated, if we ask enough good questions about that, how important is it, do you really need that, what you are doing with that later. So for example, if you ask, what do you do with that later? Do you do with that something? And he will tell you, you know what, I'm just looking at that. That doesn't strike me to be so important to me. But if he says, you know what, I'm doing the following. I'm exporting the data, I'm going to those clients, I'm calling them, I'm talking to them, I'm doing that and that, that sounds quite important, right? Because it looks like his major flaw in his business, right? So you need to continue to ask the right questions during the discovery. And if you will not do that, somebody else will do. That's the beauty of the whole team asking those questions.
But do you ever just measure?
Sorry?
Do you ever simply measure? I mean,
Yeah, obviously. So remember that.
I think that's what people
Yeah. So I'm not talking in this talk a lot about that, but obviously there is no way to go without measurement, right? You cannot do a lightweight product without measurement. You need to measure that. You need to have all that analytics behind the scenes and measure and understand what's going on. And if it's, it was stated like the best feature, the most important feature, but it's not, you will remove that eventually. That's correct. Okay? But and there are tools to do that, and there is methodologies to do that. I'm just not talking here about that. Okay, now we need to watch that again. Sorry. Okay, so that was the performance flow. This is something interesting. I wouldn't say it's really emphasizing our product, but just as a design consideration. When you build your products, you need to consider to have pictures, images, right? Together with something else. Otherwise, the products are quite problematic. So having that, you know, we could specify everything with links, okay? Just point to specific points like where's the, let's say, there's the examples of those images that we have found, etc., etc. We could design a product like the first counter example that I have shown you, like literally textual product, right? But once you combine those, and as many as you combine, you will have a better product. So icons, small images, arrows instead of you know, click here, nice buttons, all those things that you can do as a graphical or visual element provides more means or more sense to the to a customer. Okay. Okay. Progressive disclosure is just a pattern, a very simple pattern of design that you do not present the information unless it is needed. It's quite obvious. We will not talk about that here in details, but only when you click on that, you have that additional data on the right. Okay, consistency. Consistency is something that you want to have in your product in order to express similar workflows, similar ways in this at the same area or the same or with the same pattern. So, for example, what we have here is exporting, and all the exports that we have here basically concentrated on the or at the export button, and only when you click and select all those data files, you can export very easily, and it doesn't matter what kind of export we're talking about. All the exported data is being operated from one place only, and if we'll continue to add additional you know, types of export based on our customers' request, we'll just continue to add it there. Obviously, we'll apply some other techniques just to group things and to do things, but I'm sure you're familiar with applications where you can export in 10 ways and you can save the data in 10 ways and things like that. Okay? Colors. Colors are really important, but usually you either, if you select something like that, it probably will be problematic. Like Van Gogh, I don't think it's going to be good. But selecting something dull as well is problematic, so we need to play with that. So the right pattern for colors is actually using only 5 colors on the wheel. So there is a colors wheel. You can find that on the web. There are maps about how the colors are mapped. And you should select 5 adjusted colors on the wheel. Okay, so those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 probably okay. But you cannot select greens and reds. That is a little bit problematic from the human eye perspective, okay? The human eye likes to have adjusted colors together. So if you consider, and you should consider, to apply different techniques of, you know, emphasizing elements in your product, you should consider 5 colors that are coming together, okay? Okay, nudge. Nudge is a very, very interesting altering behavior design. And I will show you something quite interesting here. So, altering design could be how you help people to search. Do you have defaults already encoded in such a way that they search what you want to you want them to search? Or do you auto-suggest them specific things that you want them to search? Okay? So that technique called predictably altering behavior technique. And it was used quite successfully in that product. Okay? Okay, now it's a little bit problematic, but if you look closely, there is a fly there, right? And studies actually show that if there is, it's an artificial fly, just a drawing. It's not a real one, okay? So they applied that in the airports around the world, and they found out that the cleaning operations reduced by magnitude of 20 or 30%. Okay, and that's because it's a behavior that it's an alternate behavior, and it appears that we, as men, we try to shoot the target, okay, and then we shoot it correctly, so nobody needs to clean, okay. So that's a nice technique. So if you can use some defaults or some auto suggestions within your product in order to alter the behavior and coerce your clients to use specific patterns of execution. Okay, very, very important. It's a depth of processing. So here's something. This is taken from another software craftsmanship event, actually. But it's a lot of text about how to attend the event, how to get there. And it's quite tedious to read, okay? But you can do something like that, and this is immediately something else. So again, it's a combination of icons or images that we discussed before, but you can take a bicycle. So instead of writing a bicycle, you can use an element, a visual element, to emphasize that. And believe me or not, but studies show that actually focuses the information, and people immediately understand what's going on there. So if they need to get there, they will come despite the soccer game or whatever. Okay. And the almost last one, it's what is called contour bias. And do you remember I told you about sharp angles like triangles, rectangles, things like that? It appears that we don't like those. Okay, so if you use icons or visual elements in your product, you're better to use those ones on the right instead of the left images. And actually, if you take a look at that, there is a difference, right? You even feel kind of a very bad feeling about the left image, a very good feeling about the right one. Am I correct? Okay. So basically, I will summarize. There are obviously many other design considerations. A lightweight product, it's a process. It's a process of short cycle in which we want to focus and find 20% to implement and 80% to disregard. Now, we do that in our company using that discovery mechanism. Not always we apply that in reality, because sometimes we already have some user stories or features from other cycles, and it's quite obvious. So we don't waste our time just for nothing. But we do have that technique in order to focus. And once we focus, nothing will be entered. Obviously, there are production supports, things like that. But again, I'm talking about feature implementations. And we also test those features by walking the flow. And we're playing with the application just to see that we have the right flows in place, and we implement, or at least we try to implement, what was envisioned before. And we apply all those design techniques in order to build products that are more, let's say, that they convey the right message, right? They use the right design mechanisms, they use colors, they use focus mechanisms, they use all those techniques in order to create people feel better about the products, because after all, they have feelings as well. That's it. Questions?
So you're defining lightweight as a product that the user is somehow comfortable using, and this it reminds me of what Apple used to call user seductive.
Okay.
Is that? I mean,
I can buy that.
Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I think so. Look, from my perspective, a lightweight product is a process of discovery, okay, that employs all those techniques and tries not to provide too much, but every time deliver something and measure that and see how it goes. But that should be, as you said, very good for the customer. A customer should feel good about that, even if it's a small, right? And we always talk about how to do that, and there are many talks about, yeah, you can do that, you only just push all those features and things will be okay and everybody will be happy. But nobody actually tries to understand what is the really minimalistic value that still will be okay for the customer, and he will feel excited about it. And I will not say that I have the magic wand, but I think that those techniques helped me in the past provide those products quite correctly. And obviously I use only one product, but we have others, and I can sense how we used to develop them before and provide them before, and what a disaster usually we had, and how nicely nowadays it's just a continued discussion. So once the feature is up and they test that and they already discussed it like just 10 days ago, they feel comfortable to continue. Sometimes they will remove the feature. They say, no, it's a mistake. Sometimes we will remove the feature because we will analyze that and we'll say, yeah, that's not good. We just implemented that and for nothing. I hope it helps.
Yes. So in your lead cycle with a continuous deployment, after you release the product, how do you get the feedback from the customer? And how soon you get the feedback?
So the continuous deployment not always deploys the software on the production. You still can mark that as not being deployed, right? And sometimes we do that. And sometimes we do push the features regardless. The customers are there, or the business owners, or the domain experts are there almost every cycle. So since we're talking about 5 to 10 days, most of the cycles are towards 10 days. The customers are there, so they constantly review the products. Now the product is a web product, so if they use that and they use that, every day, they see immediately the feature. Now, if they will say it's a bug, it's an issue, we will evaluate that. Usually, if it's not critical, that will stay till a point that we'll, enter to the next cycle and see whether we should remove or fix that, since the cycles are so short. If a cycle will be like 30 days, that could be potentially, it's a little bit harder to do. Yeah.
So you started out with what's not lightweight,
Yeah.
and to me it seems like if I took your principles and I applied them, I could very easily come up with all those things that you showed.
Okay.
So what am I missing? What am I missing, or what were those people missing that led them to create that? What did they do wrong?
Okay. So look, it's a definition. It's a subjective definition. I agree on that. But eventually, if you look at the product is right at this specific time, right at this specific time. Eventually, you can build, office and complain about that all the day, right? How big it is and how problematic it is, and that's why I'm using it. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so it's a time of definition that makes the product fit the needs of your customers. Now, as I said, and that's really, really important, a lightweight product doesn't mean one feature or two features, three features. It's a lot of features. And as many as you will have, the better it will be, believe me. And you can read, there are many researchers nowadays about that actually. So those techniques that you will apply will give you that checkpoint at that specific time that what you have delivered until now is lightweight enough, okay? It does contain the information, the 20% of the information that you have focused on. Your customers agreed, everybody understand what does it mean, and you also applied all those design considerations that help them to love that product, okay? Hope that answers. So it's up to that specific point. If you can continue and build and build and build and build, eventually maybe 10 years later you will have a huge product, and I don't know whether it will qualify to the lightweight product, right? But at least from what look, there's no such thing, but it's exactly the same with code, with technology. There is no such a thing I have done. I have developed that, and that's it. That's the product. I'm not touching that anymore. There is no such a thing. You always continue to change. The changes are there. So up to that point, the question whether you tried to implement all those text boxes and radio buttons and checkboxes immediately, and did something that it's really hard to understand. Remember, the product that I'm talking about conveys the message. There is a message because you identify that message in the 20%. The most important message that the business stakeholder will like to have in the product will be found in the first iteration of the fishbowl discussion. The first one. And we'll put that and emphasize that using all those design techniques, and then we will just iterate on that, and that's it. Okay, so that will give you a message, clearance of the message, and etc., etc. Okay? If not, we can talk later on. Okay. Just a second, sorry. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying that the process itself provides some sort of self-limiting, a limiter for going overboard in that case, where your
Yes.
becomes high enough that you can
Right.
adjust.
Yeah.
Is that the correct
Yeah,
analysis?
that's correct. The process itself controls that we try, because it's short, it's focused, right? We try to apply all those things. It controls what you can develop and what you can deliver. And in that sense, that continues to provide that small iteration on top of the primarily functionalities that you want to have in the product. You're correct.
And that one goes with the continuous deployment, right? To reduce the cycle. The continuous deployment to reduce features and shorten the cycle loop.
So continuous deployment, from my point, it's not a contradiction. You just continue to do that. When I define a cycle as a product definition, that I can go to a customer and say, look, it's not only that the text box has been removed, or we added a text box. We actually did also X, Y, Z, right? So it's a little bit of saying to him, now you could implement a feature and push it immediately, and it could have a business value immediately. And in that case, that's fine. That's totally fine from my perspective. The cycle is like, you cannot do feature discovery every day. That's in my opinion, that's insane, right? So that's why I'm talking about this, that cycle. That cycle is for feature discovery. Yeah.
When you're doing the discovery role-playing exercise, how do you keep your domain expert from becoming exhausted? It seems like if you have, the participants, tag teaming in,
I want him to be exhausted. No, but honestly, as long as you ask and continue to ask, again, look, the whole idea is 2 to 4 hours, right? It's not a big deal, and we do exchange those guys, so they kind of fresh. But again, if you ask a lot of questions and you ask them and continue to ask, it actually gives also them suddenly. For example, I have seen examples of people saying, I'm not sure, I don't know, maybe we don't need that. And that didn't come from the first question. It couldn't be, because he's used to do specific things, right? But when you ask that a lot, and you're not only asking, like, what are you doing? You're asking how that helps you, what you are doing with that later, what will happen if we don't do that? And then people start to say, I didn't think about that. Maybe we don't need that. And that's the beauty. So, but the whole process is really, it could be exhausting. And also the whole team is there, so we're kind of wasting lots of time. So it's from 2 to 4 hours, right? Not to do that too much.
I have two questions that are related. You showed two screens, one from Amazon, one from the airline. And the issue clearly is because the screen real estate is valuable. The airline, for example, wants to sell additional products.
Right.
Slides.
Correct.
So they have an incentive to keep putting things on that page because it has high traffic.
Right.
So do you instrument the page to look to see if there's any roll-off of existing products to know if you've saturated it?
So it's a great question. Thank you. So what I would say here is as follows.
I think you lost your image on the
No, that's okay. So it's a great question because what you said, it's called a byproduct, and as you correctly mentioned, more features means more buyers. So no way United will not put here how to book hotels and cars and whatever, right? So it's okay. My reason will be what is the focus on the main functions. Can I easily use them without going and looking at other byproduct functions? And if yes, it's a great and lightweight product. That's fine. I'm not against having that. I'm just building that in that way that it will focus me directly and will understand what I need to do. For some people, that's okay, because we discussed that. It actually, for domestic flights, probably will be okay. For international, that will be problematic. Believe me, I'm not doing that.
And then the second question is that as that page becomes more crowded, because United's going to think of, let's say they want to start selling some seats in the departure lounges as well.
Yeah.
As it gets more crowded, it's harder to use. And so at some point, you're depending on the motivation of the person coming to the page to know how to find what it is they want to use. But you then run the risk of losing.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Again, I would say it like that. In case that you want to sell different seats, it's not on the top on the topmost page. It shouldn't be there, because it's a process of buying, and that process is here, right? It's booking the flight. So if you model your process correctly, the booking the flight should kind of take you immediately to a specific workflow that is tuned. Now you can here learn a lot of data about the customer and apply and provide suggested information. This is actually the offload principle or performance principle. You cannot put everything here. You could put here byproducts, that's okay, but again, you can do it too much. And there are some additional functions that you need to build within the process. So when I'm booking that should kick in, and that should be a very tuned, a very focused process. And if it's not, then okay, then they will put that on the first page, and that's a problem in my opinion.
So you're saying it's like the task structure then becomes important.
Right.
In your steps.
Exactly. Yeah. Correct.
So, follow up with that questions. I mean, you have the right product and the easy workflow, but wouldn't a busy page also increase the mental load? So when I go to this page, you know, I need to like kind of like get my bearing around and get oriented to identify which section that I'm interested in.
So let me answer that in that way. I'll come from the byproducts. Byproducts are big things, right? And if United will sell, I don't know, bedrooms, it doesn't make sense to put them on the first page as well, okay? So it's only a limited number of byproducts as well. And that's, you can see on Google, right? You don't have all the byproducts like coming immediately on the first page. There is a specific way to see all the byproducts of being hooked by other products that will drive you to the byproducts. So the performance offload, again, there probably will be 2 or 5 primarily functionalities of your product, and that you should kind of religiously protect and have on your first page. That's for sure. Everything else, you really need to monitor, to check, to analyze. So it's not a technology definition. It's hard to say. Sometimes it might be 7 byproducts. That's okay, right? But again, the primarily functionalities will be here, and that you need to emphasize. You need to pop it up, and everything else should be within the other processes or the byproducts. But again, you cannot put too many of those. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I hope I helped.